Welcome to our panel, and please welcome again our panelist. It's Stephanie Bradford, our in-house diversity expert. It is Kirsten Redke, our documentation manager or expert, and it is Guntis. I'm sorry for this, but Bredzens, I hope it's right.
Guntis Bārsdiņš.
Barzens, okay. Guntis is professor at the Latvian University. And last but not least, it is Alfonso Mendes, and he is a senior project manager at our main partner, Prebram. So, yeah. I would like to start with Stephanie. And I think you have a very interesting use case working with our in-house co-developed tool. Maybe you can say a few words about it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here and very excited to be here in this place and talk about my experience from the diversity department. I work for the International Relations and Diversity Department, and I have the opportunity to use the platform, NLP platform, as a super user. And this is for our long videos diversity, our long diversity videos. These are videos that are panel discussions with multiple speakers, and this is around 1 long hour videos. So we have to do all the different tasks. We have to do transcription, translation, subtitling, and importing this for the post-production. And with the use of NLP and language technologies, we have the chance to integrate these workflows to our team. And this means that we don't have to do these things manually. So we could do the things in a more collaborative way, in a faster way. So this gives us the chance to provide more accessible content and as well to insert subtitles and doing this in a more collaborative way. So this is okay when you're working with short videos, but it's quite a task if you have to process 1 hour videos.
And how was your experience using the tool? Was it relief or was it more difficult, like a new workflow? So was it overall complicated or good experience? How is the impact of using our tool?
I can say it's a very a super exciting experience to integrate AI into our workforce. This is, I think, is a step forward. Instead of doing things manually, you can really use the support of artificial intelligence to use the NLP platforms and integrate language technologies. I think that with this, we have the chance really to see how fast things are happening, especially with these long 1 hour videos. The challenging part is always how to process this whole information and do it in a very accurate and in a faster way. So we don't see as like this is like a support for the things and not like taking job away from us. So it's really you always have to use the human review. The tool is a support. It's there that you can use it and you can do it in a collaborative way, but you always will need this human review. So for us, it was a really good experience. We get the chance to see the development of PlainX. I was sorry to say from the time zero. So I started with the super user, the diversity videos were the case. And then we see how the platform gets stronger and stronger, enhancing more and more, and now getting new features and also providing new tools and new ways to collaborate. So I'm very excited how is the future also for PlainX.
Cool. And I also wanted to ask you another question. So basically, AI is quite often seen not essentially as a force of diversity, but as, on the other hand, having an adversive effect on representation and diversity. But of course, it doesn't have to be like this. What are your thoughts on what are the prerequisites for maybe responsible AI? And how could we as a public entity, because Deutsche Welle is in the end a public entity that represents the interests of the public and not essentially of private companies or private people, how could we have an impact on this discourse, and what could be our role when we talk about AI? And
very good question. So I will start answering the first question with AI and diversity. I think AI and diversity belongs together. We cannot talk about diversity without tackling also the AI spectrum, because you see, you want to do simplicity in the language, you want to be more accessible with the content, you want to provide subtitles and things, and also diversity in the language. With such a tool, you have the chance, for example, to process so many language in a faster way. This will be almost impossible to do it manually, and especially one person. So this is a very good way to support the work. And diversity, it's because I'm talking that AI could be a part of, could be also a diversity dimension. This means that you have to process all this information and see how they work together. And then at the end of the day, we want to produce a diverse content, and this diverse content needs to be represented. And how you can do it that with multilingual sources, providing diversity in the language, and also you can measure things. You can measure the content, how diverse it is, because at the end of the day, we want to be more diverse and inclusive, and this can only be shown or represented if you see that the content as well speak for itself.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this is a very interesting topic that we can probably have more discussions about. And my next question is to Guntis. So you have a more academic background. So how would you explain the relationship between the academic field and how it is implemented in with public actors, like, for example, LETA, the Latvian broadcaster?
Yes. I have, in some sense, two hats here, academic and also a small enterprise hat here as well, because besides participating in this project and previous SOMA project, we also created a small startup company, Pine Tree, which at the end of the day created software and sold to LETA, which is being used for 2 years already in the media company, which somehow shows that the many tools which we are developing in these projects, not all of them really get traction in the media companies, but there is one tool which really got traction and is really being used. And that tool which LETA is using, which we produced in the previous projects, is a named entity linking tool, in the sense that what they are doing, that all news LETA is producing, they are linking named entities towards Enterprise Register of Latvia. So all people and companies which are mentioned in the news, they are linked to this database of official database of enterprises and official persons representing these companies, and also to other databases. For example, elected persons, they also need to submit their CVs to a special database. So also these news are linked to that database. So basically, LETA is able to see through this tool all companies and persons mentioned in the news, actually to see more details about them, what is available in the public registers of Latvia. And then what I also found out by using this tool is that actually many persons and entities they are writing about actually are not mentioned in these registers at all. That there are a lot of organizations which are not companies, which are some social groups or other groupings of people which are talked a lot about in news, but they are not really official entities. So they are creating also a database of these unofficial entities in some sense by this tool. And this is example of maybe not very complex tool, but still there is artificial intelligence involved in named entity recognition, that it is suggesting to the editing journalists all these person names and organizations which should be marked in the news item. So in this case, again, the artificial intelligence is not doing the job of the journalist, it's just helping him to do it faster. So I think that this idea that we are not correcting errors of artificial intelligence, but we are reviewing everything artificial intelligence is only suggesting, and it is journalist who takes decision, and this works. So this is my brief take on this topic.
Latvia and the Baltics in general are often portrayed as pioneers when it comes to the uptake of digital tools and digitalization in the public sphere. we have a lot of examples for example, like registering a company and things like that. It is known in the international community that those things are much easier and faster to do in Latvia because it is so advanced in the digital sphere. Do you think it also extends to the uptake of natural language processing tools by actors like Leta or other public broadcasters?
Yes, I think that there is a sense of truth in this statement that in Baltics this digitalization is somehow happening a bit faster. I think that Estonia perhaps is the best example where you can even go to elections electronically. In Latvia, we are a bit afraid to do that yet. So maybe you have to be careful what you digitize, what you don't, to be really sure that nothing gets wrong. But on natural language processing in Latvia, we are really strong in the sense that we have both in university strong artificial intelligence laboratory. Normunds Grūzītis is the head of that laboratory here present as well. And we have company Tilde, which is producing a lot of natural language processing tools, which are used even by Deutsche Welle for benchmarking machine translation. So I think that yeah, we are strong on that field. And we are a small country, of course, we are much more flexible just to try them out. And if something goes wrong, of course, you can stop it as well more easily.
Yeah, and how do you feel this will develop over the coming years? Because I think, especially when it comes to public broadcasting, to media, we are now in a very difficult situation in terms of misinformation informing particular groups, because information is now a very political topic. It probably was always, but now maybe more than ever. How do you think that digital tools and especially natural language processing can assist and be a positive force in this area?
Yeah, no, these information clouds or bubbles, how you call them, that people live in these bubbles. In Latvia, we see it daily that there are, of course, groups of people which are thinking inside their bubble, and it is this is probably the cause of a lot of trouble we are having right now. I don't think that natural language processing is able to solve the problem. At least we have not found a magic bullet for that. But it's true that we are using natural language processing tools to really transcribe all videos which are broadcast and all media we are getting from Russia or Ukraine and so. And if anybody can figure out what to do with that transcribed data, it's still up for grabs. So my question earlier in the day that can you predict tomorrow from today's news is basically, I think it's an open question what to do with this data.
Yeah. Now I have a question basically for Alfonso, and we've been talking a lot about the public actors. And I know that you have also a lot of clients for these applications and tools that are in the agency sector. So how do you think the digital uptake of digital tools and solutions in terms of NLP, how does it affect the agencies at the moment?
So media monitoring, which the agencies were talking about, they need to process huge amounts of data. So we were talking today about numbers that go on 200,000 a day. So it's basically impossible to analyze that kind of data manually. And most of the work that's being done by media monitoring agencies is still a very manual job. So NLP and AI is something that must be implemented and must be used in these agencies, because if not, they will not be able to gather what's really happening in the media out there. There are a few things which I would like that would happen and make this better, this job better and more interesting to these people, which is like Kuntis was asking today, is our ability to predict from the data that we are gathering what's going to happen next. And we can't do that now, but we can capture the signals of what's trending, what's going probably to happen. And that, for instance, in Monity, we can capture that pretty well right now.
And do you feel like agencies or the private sector in general is more open to digital solution and also especially to natural language processing tools?
That's an interesting question, and I don't really have a yes or no for that. We've been working a lot with companies from the public sector, like Deutsche Welle, or like hospitals in Portugal, where we do extraction of metadata out of texts from patients and things like that. And I really can see there's a difference between the adoption in the public sector and the private sector. I think there's really a need for these tools, and people are getting more confident on the use of these tools. They are getting more reliable. So that's the answer I have for that.
And what do you think are at the moment the biggest hindrance, basically the factors that impact growth of this market of this AI tools? Is there anything particular that basically puts the brakes on it? Maybe some regulations or anything other? Of course, we are also living at the moment in a very uncertain and fragile economic situation. So what do you think are the positive and the negative factors that impact the overall market?
So I think, like I was saying, confidence in the technology is a must that we must have here. And AI has still a few problems that must be addressed, like you were asking before about the way of doing AI, responsible AI. So we have to take a big care about the data sets that we use, how diverse they are, how well curated they are, because we can produce models which have a lot of biases and will affect the diversity that you were talking about before. So that's one of the things. In terms of regulations, regulations for responsible AI is something that we must get. So this is the work that is starting in terms of governments, and we need to regulate how we produce AI. And I think that's it.
Yeah. And then on the other side, we of course also have the consumers, the users, basically the people on the receiving side of the information. How do you think they are affected by AI solution and natural language processing tools in general?
Well, I think what we've seen today and the possibility of reaching much more people because of AI is something that makes a big change here. So for Deutsche Welle to be able to produce a video in English and then have it translated quite fast in 30 languages, it makes all the difference.
Yeah, definitely. And I think my last question for you would be, what do you think are the most important factors that help people adapt these technologies? Like, how can we better support the users? And by users in general, I mean, of course, also the people who work with the solutions, not essentially the audience, but more like the power users. How can we make people more receptive of these new technologies? And like you say, also more confident.
That's a hard question for me.
No.
But yes, I think things like this, trying to put researchers together with the people that are using, making the technology more affordable to people, that makes the difference. Having, for instance, in Europe, training a model for AI, it's something very costly. Mm-hmm. So if we could figure out ways of managing the costs of training these models together, that could make a big difference for the adoption of these technologies, because the models will be better. It will be more diverse because they will be more participated between lots of people in different countries. So that would make a huge difference.
Thank you very much. So Kerstin, you also had the chance to work with our in-house developed natural language processing tools. And how was your experience?
Well, for me, it was rather helpful to have those tools and to see what we can do with technology to help our work and to support the people that are working behind the scenes, and not only the journalists, but also us in the archives, for example, and all the other departments that work for the journalists to make their work easier. And I think those tools are really important to manage this volume of data that we are producing and that we need for our productions. So yeah, I think it was rather helpful.
And we also talked a lot about kind of the readiness for uptake of those technologies. How do you feel people in these more supporting roles, are they confident, or do they also look forward using new tools, or is this more a chore of convincing people that this is something that is helpful?
I think the opinions are rather divided. I think there is the general concern that has come up during all the presentations, I think, and it's the same for the supporting workers in the background. On the one hand, they fear that they could lose their jobs, or that they are not necessary anymore to work, because all the work is done by AI and AI supported tools. But I think that is not the reality, and I can just follow the lead here and add that we always need the human in the background to check and to work these tools. And I think, on the other hand, there are people like me, for example. I think it's a really big help in our daily work, and it saves us time and opens up time for other tasks that are coming up and that are more important now. And it reduces the tasks that we have to do routinely, which can be done by artificial intelligence, so that we are free to explore new options and to work with our minds more, something that AI is not yet possible, not yet able to do. So.
And was this like the experience in general of people that after using the tools for some time, they now found more time, or like basically the opportunity to do tasks that they usually would not do? So could they already like really experience this kind of positive sides of using the tools?
I think we are not exactly at that point yet, because the tools are not that long implemented in our work. So people are still adapting to working with those tools, and maybe try to reap the benefits of them. But I think it will come within the next years. So there will be some phase of adapting still going on. But I think within a few years, I think people will find that the tools will help them and will, well, give them the time and space to do the task more efficiently, and maybe be more successful in what they are doing, just because they have the time to really go into depth with their tasks, and not just do it superficially.
Yes. And following up on this, how did you feel working with especially in-house developed or in-house co-developed tools? Do you think that there is a need for more corporations that we like kind of really can identify and cater to specific needs of your work in particular?
Well, I think the tools that we have might already help us a lot. I do think that we, as the archive, so the Department of Information and Archives, we do have special needs for artificial intelligence that are not the same as maybe the editorial staff has and the journalists might have. So I think there will be a need for further development. But I think we have, as Deutsche Welle, very special needs in the ARD corporation. So many tools we get from the ARD and we can use in the archives are made for German content. And for Deutsche Welle, we just need more than German, obviously. And therefore, it is rather important for us that we have these in-house developments and cooperation developments. And I think there is a lot of possibility and a lot of room to explore more artificial intelligence that can be used in the supporting departments.
And when we talk about the user's perspective here, so do you think something like privacy and in general transparency and trust in something that is kind of co-developed here is higher than in other products? And is this a factor for example, your team in how willing you are to use it or not to use it? And does it kind of overshadow maybe even the aspect of usability, or is this less important than, let's say, usability?
Well, I think usability is a big factor, actually, but I also think that the confidence is more present for tools that are developed within Deutsche Welle or in cooperation with Deutsche Welle, just because we have our values and we have our standards, and we can be sure that they are considered when developing those tools, and that the data is secure with our partners. And I think that is something that stands in the way of using maybe open source products or products from other companies, like, for example, with Google. You have these concerns, and maybe these are not as present and not as drastic as, when we work with products that Deutsche Welle developed in cooperation or in-house. So, because all those values and standards are already considered.
Okay, thank you very much, Kirsten. Do we have some questions in the room? Kina.
I take this one. It's okay. No, I take it.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Yes.
So my question is actually for all four of the panelists. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. And this topic has been touched upon in this discussion also twice, is the problem with biasness in AI models, which I think is a result of the data that the models are being trained on. So the way the data is collected, biasness comes from there. So what kind of checks and balances can we put on to actually address this problem of data collection and then biasness in that data, specifically in terms of diversity? That's my question.
Maybe I can start, and then you can add some information. Yeah, when we're talking about biases, we know as soon as we're talking about biases, when we have a brain, we are biased. So we have to always work on that. We have to be conscious that we have biases, and that's why we need to create also systems that are like tackling these issues, but in a different way. We have to define also value criteria. this criteria is relevant. You know that it's defined by these the designers of the different platforms. But if you have fair value criteria, then you are also fighting against biases, and then you can have more representation. At the end of the day, we always want to be more diverse and inclusive, and we also want to represent what our target groups are, so that the content is diversified, and also we are representing our different target groups. So this can be done with fair value criteria, that the designers themselves are also diverse, that we understand what biases means. And I always like to apply to the, we value the diversity of thoughts. This means we value the different perspectives. We want to have these different perspectives, and this can only be represented if the person who do this is diverse, and the content that we are producing is also for our diverse society. So in this combination, AI will support humans doing this, and then we will avoid these flaws and these biases.
Maybe I can add to that. We balance out the biases that come from the artificial intelligence by having a standardized framework of keywords and categories that we map the outcome of the artificial intelligence to. So of course, we ourselves have to think diverse and have to keep the diversity in mind when standardizing those keywords and those categories. But with the standardization, we can balance out the biases that might come from the artificial intelligence themselves.
So I think probably the main issue with biases in AI comes from the selection of data sets, the data sets that you use for training. So one of the things which is very important in responsible AI is the selection of data sets, and the assurance that the data set is sufficiently generic and captures all the parts of what you want to analyze. So, and that's a very manual job still. There are some ways of tackling that issue, but it's probably one of the major tasks that we must do when we do artificial intelligence. There's another thing which isn't exactly about bias, but is our ability to understand why the artificial intelligence is making that prediction or whatever the artificial intelligence. And this goes for models explainability. The models that you use today are black boxes. So you put there a lot of text or whatever, and you get something on the outside, but you don't know the process that's going on inside that black box. And so if I'm talking to you and you are expressing an opinion, I will ask, but why do you say that? What's the basis for you to say that? And I can't ask that now to most of artificial intelligence models. And this is an area of research that's ongoing, and that will have a major impact in the confidence that we have on using artificial intelligence.
Yeah, no, I actually would like to make a more down-to-earth comment on that I liked very much today. It was mentioned that if there are numbers, you have to act on them. As long as you don't have numbers, you think that maybe everything is okay. And in that sense, to get this measurement of actual news produced, how good they are, how balanced they are, and how biased they are, I think this is the most realistic thing we can do today. And one of the tools is really this named entity linking to databases, which can tell us this 50-50 ratio in the first place, but of course many other metrics about news which are really being produced right now. So I think this named entity linking and these things which we are doing are somehow relevant to that. Yes.
Question to the two users, virtual users in this panel. If you could select one thing that you would put as a requirement for the tools that we already have and how they are now, what would be the one feature or one requirement you would come up with? Maybe Stephanie, you first.
Thank you, Peggy. Yeah, we know that these language technologies provides different features, and I think there are different categories that we can add. For sure, one of the things is that it's able to work in categories for different diversity dimensions. That will be for me, for example, in the work that I do, very relevant. And one of the main tasks is, of course, when you're trying to diversify the language and provide different languages and stuff, you have to also see that this diversification is provided. So this is a very relevant feature. We want to have AI and diversity together. We want that AI is part of the diversity dimension, and this is only when we provide diverse content, diversified language. We also provide accessibility. These for me are all relevant. I cannot just say this one is for me or the other one, because we talking about the spectrum of diversity, and this is what makes the things more complex. But I think these tools and AI is getting stronger and stronger, and we have to have this very clear. It is not machines or humans. It is humans being supported for artificial intelligence. And this is working together, collaboration, and then we get these things stronger, and then we can excel both parts. This is my point of view.
Thank you. Kirsten.
I would go as far as to say the requirement might be an all-over requirement, not for a specific product, but for both of them, for all of them, actually. Maybe to take the supporting departments more into consideration while developing such tools, because I can only speak for the archives, of course, but we have high use for language technology. So we do work with keyword extraction. We do work with topic modeling. We have speech-to-text systems at place at the moment. And I find that often AI tools are produced and developed for editorial staff and for editorial departments. And we are a vital part of the editorial process and the production of content for Deutsche Welle. And I think that is often overseen because we are not at the front, but in the back end and working with the editors and for the editors. And we also do have requirements for such tools, but yeah, we are often overlooked just because we are not the front runners and not screaming the loudest, I think.
We would love to work with them.
Yeah, that's
Well,
great.
we'll
Good
make
to
that
know.
work.
Of course.
I have a lot of questions. So the other question that I'm always thinking about when we're thinking about AI and big data sets is always we are always in this kind of a problem where the more data we have, of course, the better our AI models are. On the other hand, there is this problem of ethics and data privacy. Because we are a media company, a lot of data that we want to gather is actually, like also our viewers and our readers. So how to tackle this problem of on one side, having more efficient AI models, as well as trying to also tackle this problem of keeping the privacy perspective in mind. It's also a question for all four of you.
So the first thing is the more data, the better models is not always true. For instance, I was reading a paper the other day where they analyzed prejudice outputted from a language model. And they arrived to the conclusion that the bigger the model, the higher the prejudice that the model was outputting. And that's something which is very interesting to study. Why that happens. The other thing about data protection, and well, there are a few techniques to avoid having personal data in the models. There is a technique which we are using for the hospitals. At the beginning, we just selected old names and erased them from the data, all personal information. And now we are using a different technique, which I think it's very interesting, which is we scramble new names where the old names were. So we keep the information which is originally in the data set, because the name of the person is not important, but the context where a name is mentioned, it is. We just scramble it, so there's no personal data in the final data set.
And maybe I can add just some thoughts to this topic. Of course, it is really the problem in AI and deep learning that is privacy and big data sets are somehow opposite ends of what you can do. And in that sense, there are, of course, different ways. One is to scramble and hide this private data. Another thing is, I think, and also in these large language models, which is being done, that you actually add filters after that. So I think that it's unrealistic to expect that journalist will not know more than he is writing. So the person, this filter at the end is the one which filters out really the sensitive data. But you can't make this artificial intelligence somehow too dumb either. It will not work then.
I would agree to that and say that is the opportunity I see for people to work with artificial intelligence and not be replaced by it, because you always need a person to monitor and to check the data that comes out of it, artificial intelligence tools. For example, for facial recognition tools, you have to monitor which people were recognized, which ones are public figures and can be named and used as named entities to make accessible in research, for example, and which are, for example, people on the streets that were interviewed and do not show up as named entities and are not considered public figures and therefore have to be protected in their privacy. So I think that is a really good opportunity to tell people that they are not replaced, but have different fields, different tasks in which they can work. For example, monitoring those artificial intelligence tools they are using.
I would also like to add a point on that. We also have to think how far we want to go, how far you want to go, how far we want to go, because nowadays we could measure anything, but it doesn't mean that we are allowed to measure everything. So that's why these fair value criteria has also to be defined, that we are really measuring things that we are supposed to measure. And we have, for example, when we talk about the spectrum of diversity, we could measure race, gender, ethnicity, so many things. And the information is there, but how we manage this information and what we do with this information at the end of the day is what makes the difference. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for the answers. What we do, I'm just thinking about what we do with the data. So maybe one question, now that we can analyze it and filter stuff and make these huge content streams not only available, but also searchable, and we find things, what are we doing with it? And how do we connect it to the houses? We now have seen how the information and archives would also take benefit of it and being in this process from the early beginning. So, and how do we do the participation from an early step to have the requirements to, in the end, make a change? So where can we connect? So that's also the question, how we, what we do with the results which are there, and how do we bring it back into the house and to the different stakeholders. So, I mean, that's more a comment, not really a question, but the numbers are there, and what we basically do with it, and how do we put an additional communication layer on top of it to connect it somewhere to make changes.
Maybe I can start. Just brainstorming here, I could think of connecting different perspectives through the data that we gather through artificial intelligence. Munizio is a great example for that. So you get access to different perspectives from all around the world, because you have access to the content that is published all around the world, even though you maybe don't speak the language, or maybe you never thought about looking at maybe content from India or from Russia or from China, whatever. And now you have these analyzed and clustered and categorized contents, and you can filter them down, and you can use keywords for your search, and you can just go for it, and you have all those different perspectives to one topic that you might have not had before, because there was no way you could access this content. And also the archived content, maybe from departments that already produced something to a topic, for a topic, and you can just access that because you now have the tools for that. You can be supported by artificial intelligence to just get a more focused and more, maybe also more diverse view on topics. And I think that is pretty great.
We were proposing the other day a European project. It was on fact checking, but I think the really interesting idea there was, so you have people, and people want to know about things, and they want to find out if what a politician is saying is true or false. Most of the fact checking tools that we find out there, they'll try to say whether the claim is true or the claim is false. And in that project, we had a different approach, which was using Monitio data, which was given a claim or something that someone is trying to find out about, showing the people different perspectives that come out on the media about the subject he's searching, so that people get the information and they don't stay on the bubble. So they can get out of the bubble, because social media does that. So people get inside bubbles, and they hardly can get out of there easily. So giving a tool that makes people aware of different perspectives, different ways of looking at the same problem would be something very interesting.
I totally agree with that. Different perspectives. And like you were asking, you have access to all this information and what we do with this information. So at the end of the day, if we want to, from the diversity perspective, see if there's representation, and you have the data, you can analyze the data, you see if there's representation there, and if it's not there, then there's work to be done.
Yeah, no, it's hard to add much more to your comments, but still, being a lecturer, so basically your task is to capture audience in some sense. You have to ask interesting questions and get some insights which listeners didn't have before. So I think that I don't. Maybe news is not an art, but still you have to make something better at the end of the day, so that somebody wants to listen to it. And I think that this is where probably this, if we want to make some impact, we have to think how to use this gathered information to produce something, either news of tomorrow, predictor, or something else, but to make it more interesting.
Thank you. Thanks for the answers.
Thank you very much. I think we can conclude our panel with this note. It was a very interesting discussion, and I guess for us, we also gathered a lot of input for future thoughts, and we will hopefully have some of these topics popping up again and again, because I think that overall having especially the users also here, people from Deutsche Welle, like you two, who work with these tools and have a very kind of practical perspective is also very important for us, for the consortium, and for all the interested audience today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.